Hey everybody, and welcome to Dominion Cards, the video series where we take a strategic, in-depth look at various cards from the board game Dominion. Today we're looking at Golem. This is a 4 coin and a potion cost action card from Alchemy, and it says, reveal cards from your deck until you reveal 2 action cards other than golems. Discard the other cards, then play the action cards in either order. So what does Golem do? Well, Golem searches through your deck for 2 action cards and then it forces you to play them, but you get to pick the order in which you play those 2 action cards. If you have very high action density, so like you're expected that the next 2 cards in your deck are action cards, then this is a little bit like playing a laboratory and a village. This is what we call a lost city effect after the card in Adventures that is +2 cards, +2 actions. But the problem is that you've got a pretty awkward order of play. You are basically forced to play the next 2 cards in your deck first. Now, if you have very low action density, then Golem can filter through your deck to find the powerful action cards. A little bit like a warehouse type of thing, right? Or cellar. You're basically pushing past all of those coppers and the states and curses to try and get straight to the action cards. Now, one key thing with Golem, does not play other golems and it skips over them. It will discard any golems that it comes across. So if you want to play more golems in your turn, you're going to need to find other ways to draw, because you're going to have to draw those golems with something other than golem. So Golem is a very risky card. If you want to use it as a village and it finds 2 terminals, then that can actually kill the action phase of your turn. If you start your turn with a golem and it finds like 2 smithies, that's it. You're not playing any more actions this turn. It can play action cards that you don't want to, or play them too early, because Golem forces you to play the 2 actions that it finds. You have to play them before you play anything else. So sometimes you can get trash cards, like say Trading Post, where it's like now you must trash 2 cards from your hand. And maybe you don't want to do that with the cards that were currently in your hand. Or you get, the funny example, Tactician, where you're forced to play it with Golem and it just discards your hand very suddenly. And that was, you're not doing anything else this turn. Obviously, you wouldn't really go for Golem if you have such incredibly risky cards in your deck. So keep those in mind. Now, if you are reliant on a Golem as a village, again, you can just discard all of your other golems. So Golem isn't very good as the only village in your deck. Like if you're thinking to yourself, Golem's the only village, I'm going to try and play like a load of bridges. Well, you may actually struggle to play like more than 1 or maybe 2 golems on a turn just because you can't actually draw the other golems to play them, because Golem just keeps putting them in your discard pile. Golem is very bad at triggering terrible shuffles that are filled with junk. And this is especially true when Golem finds cards that draw. So what Golem will do is it will put a whole load of like your coppers, your estates, your curses and so on into your discard pile, and it will strip all of the actions out of that. So you will end up churning through a deck, putting all of your good actions into play and putting all this crap into the discard pile, and then you hit a smithy or something, it draws you to trigger the shuffle, and now you've just got this massive shuffle filled with really bad cards, and you don't really get that fine control. Sometimes with these sorts of cards you want to be very careful. Like I'm thinking about cards like Warehouse. You've got to be very careful to not trigger those bad shuffles and only draw up right to the end and not go any further. But you kind of can't really do that with Golem sometimes, so do be very careful. Now the nice thing is, if you don't have any action cards and you do play like another Golem, it will run through that new draw pile that is filled with junk, and it will go all the way through and it won't find anything, and then it will just discard them all again. But you don't always get to do that. Now Golem cannot play cards from your hand, so it's got the same sort of problem that sometimes Vassal can have, in that you can sort of end up with all of the cards that you want to play in your hand, and then Golem cannot actually get to them to play them. So you want to watch out for cards like Treasury and Alchemist, that you get the chance to always top deck them on your turn. It may be that you don't want to top deck them because you want to increase the odds that they're in your deck. so that Golem can actually find them. Because if you were hoping to play a Golem and hit 2 alchemists in order to get the village effect, but you start with all the alchemists in your hand, well, it's never going to hit them anymore. Lastly, you want to keep track of what cards you actually own and which of them you have in your hand and in play, so that you can tell what actions you've actually got left. If you play Golem and it doesn't find any actions, then that's kind of just a waste of an action. It'll put everything left in your draw pile and discard into the discard pile, and you just spend an action to do that. It's pretty bad. Golem is also a very expensive card. It costs 4 coins and a potion, and this is pretty expensive. It's also worth noting that potion is a treasure, and your golems will like to skip over it and put it in the discard. And this can make it very hard to buy more golems, because it's very hard to get potion cost cards without buying them. Most decks, the only way to get them is to buy them. It means you've got to draw the potion into your hand, and you've got to draw it along with 4 coins that you're willing to spend. And if your potion keeps getting thrown into your discard pile, you can just get blocked from actually buying any more golems. So it can be quite difficult to actually end up with a number of golems in your deck as a direct result of that. So when would you get Golem? So Golem is pretty easily skippable if there are better ways to basically get card draw and plus actions. This is because Golem, as we've explained, is very expensive and unreliable. Sometimes it's basically just the village or draw of last resort. Right, you basically have no choice. You want to draw cards, you want plus actions, you got to go for Golem, and so that'll force you into buying it. In decks with no or limited trashing, the filtering can be pretty great. This can churn past quite a lot of junk, and because it goes to find 2 action cards, it can very easily skip over a pretty sizable amount of junk. And when you would do this is when there are reasons to want to play some particular action cards as often as possible. Could be there's a really strong attack card like Goons out there, for example, and you just want to play the Goons as much as you can. Well, Golem's going to help you do that. It will find them. If you can get a high density of non-terminal cards in your deck, then Golem, you can remove a lot of the risk, and you can treat it as kind of like a Velocity. So if you just have a way of amassing a load of Pearl Divers at little cost, for example, then a Golem can work fine in a regular sort of engine. But you've got to remember that this is still pretty expensive. Like, if you consider that a potion has to be bought in place of like a silver, then you are thinking of Golem, it's going to be costing like at least 6. Usually people think of potion as being like 2.5 coins. So this is very, very expensive card. And just some last points about Golem. So if your deck is very junky and you are hoping to use it for that like filtering, sifting effect, sometimes you can struggle to find your potion. So potion allows you to buy cards in a way that's measured in number of shuffles. And so if you've got a very junky deck, you're probably not drawing through it very quickly, and so you just won't see it. And then occasionally it'll also get skipped, and now you've got to wait for a whole other shuffle in order to get it. And you also need to be able to afford the 4 coins at the same time. And particularly if you've got a very junky deck and you're like filled with curses and there's no trashing, you actually might not just, like, you might only draw your potion with 2 or 3 coins, and then it's a complete waste of time. You can't buy the Golem anyway, so that's unfortunate. If the junk is ruins, then obviously Golem is largely unplayable. It's just going to keep getting stuck on the ruins, which are very bad cards. You don't really want to be buying Golem just to play ruins. You will ignore Golem a lot. It is a bottom 20% card in the latest form of community rankings. It is just simply isn't very good. That's Golem. Like, this is not a strong card. You will use it sometimes, but a lot of the time you just ignore Golem because it's too weak. So that's all I really have to say about Golem. So what we're going to do now is we're going to head over to the online client. We're going to generate some random kingdoms with Golem in it, and we're going to see what impact Golem has on these boards. So here, Golem is actually the only village And what's particularly interesting here is that Possession is a card that you want to play, but when you're being possessed, your opponent who is possessing you absolutely does not want to play it accidentally. So Golem with Possession is interesting in that you can possess your opponent while also rendering your deck pretty safe from, or a lot harder for a possessing opponent to use, because they actually don't want to play your golems in case they hit possession, because then they will be giving you extra turns, which is sort of counterproductive. So that's pretty interesting here. There is trashing with upgrade. It is a forced trasher, but might be okay. Yeah, it's the only village. There is Warehouse. There is Torturer. I am wondering, well, So what would be the goal here? So you've got Remodel and Upgrade to trash in Warehouse and Harbinger. The only plus buy, well, there's Courtier, there's Pawn, and technically there's like extra turns with Possession. So you can get a deck that is filled with stuff like Pawns. Courtier is only okay. It will get you some money. I think this is a deck where you really do go for the Possession sort of deal. You got to watch out for Upgrade. If you get possessed, Upgrade is pretty nice for your opponent to like get a bunch of. They can just trash whatever they want basically at little risk. Same with Remodel. What's the alternative if we don't go for Golem? So you can't really get an engine off. You're not going to be able to do nice like Remodel Courtier tricks because you can't build an engine, so you can't gain golds and then remodel them into provinces. You know, you could play like one Torturer per turn, but that doesn't feel very good. I think the Golem Possession thing is actually good enough that you want to try and go for it. It is very, very expensive, but it does mean that the potion that you are buying gets to contribute towards possessions as well. But to get there, that is a lot of money that you have to spend. So the first thing we need to do is we need to upgrade our deck to get it a bit thinner. We have got Warehouse to discard stuff from our hand, which can be nice for Golem. Means that we don't get stuck with like, a bunch of possessions already in our hand, so we can play them if we need to. We do want a bunch of buys to get cheaper cards, but that means we're going to need some. You see, it's difficult because we can't build like a Torturer engine to get the golems to then get the possessions because there's no other village. So is it just too slow to get these two cards? Like, what's the fastest alternative strategy? Is it just Torturer big money? Do we forego Upgrade and we just go like Torturer big money? Our opponent gets to discard. They get discard attacked quite a lot when they're trying to build up to this. And the thing is that there's no other way to increase their hand size except for Torturer. So if you hit them with Torturer, how are they actually ever going to afford Possession and Golem? I don't think they can. So despite this being cute, I think it is too expensive and too unwieldy to work. The rest of what is available isn't good enough to get this going. And if they do get it going, they would catch up fairly quickly because they get like extra turns. You know, but yeah, so I think you actually skip Golem here. I think in the end, the cute engine with like playing lots of possessions is just too slow, and I think playing Torturer and like buying golds and stuff is just better. And they've got like Warehouse as well to help them do that potentially. So if you're not doing the Torturer strategy, like they can get a Warehouse Torturer and they can play it a lot more often, and that's just going to be really bad for the Golem Possession person. So, okay, I think we skip Golem there, but it was fun to think about. So there you go, it had that going for it. I said there's no way to increase hand size except Torturer, but of course there was Golem, wasn't there, hitting cantrips. Anyway, moving on. We've got Chapel as very powerful trashing. So again, Golem is the only village here, but the thing is, in order for it to be a village, it has to hit a caravan, and caravan will be stuck in play half the time. Makes it very hard to do. So what's the alternative? Well, there's Wharf big money. And if you're doing Wharf big money, then you're probably not even going to bother with Chapel, I want to say. You don't do Wharf Philosopher's Stone because you're drawing cards. So Philosopher's Stone is bad. Even though Wharf gives you a lot of buy to bloat your deck, you are drawing cards, and that's actually going against Philosopher's Stone, so we don't do that. So it's Courtyard big money, it's Wharf big money. I think those are the only things to do. There's actually very little going on in this kingdom. And Golem, there's nothing good enough to make Golem going worth for. Or, sorry, to make Golem worth going for, like, in terms of the rest of, like, a money thing. So I think it's just like a Wharf big money thing, I'm afraid. Wharf very strong in a big money, yeah. Maybe you open a cut purse to try and stop your opponent hitting 5, but otherwise we're just going to be buying some Wharves, we're going to be buying golds. I think that's it. So pretty sad. We're definitely not getting Transmute or Golem or Philosopher's Stone. So a whole trio of very, very poor potion cost cards. These might actually be the 3 worst potion cost cards, all in one kingdom. So here, straight away, I spot that we have Lurker to get around, needing to buy a potion. We have 3 potion cost cards as well. So that's nice. So Lurker feels like it's going to be good. In addition to that, we have Lurker with Steward. Steward is great with Lurker because you're going to end up with 2 card hands pretty often. So we can do anything we want to with Lurker here. So how good is Lurker? So I noticed that we've got Conspirator to get our deck thin. So we can Steward down, we can Lurker, we can get some Conspirators. There is no plus buy. That means that we can only ever use 8 money in one turn. There is Fishing Village as an alternative village. There is Alchemist as alternate draw. So Golem doesn't feel very good. I think that we can trigger Conspirator very easily with Alchemist. So, actually I say that, but of course if we're never getting a potion because we're using Lurker, then we don't get to top deck the Alchemists. So they're not a guaranteed way to trigger Conspirator. A part of me wants to use Replace, but how would we use Replace? Well, we can lurk things, right? We can use Lurker for extra gains, and we can gain some action cards, and then we can replace them into like Duchy and also give out a curse. That feels like the other alternative is we can only buy 1 province per turn, so we really want to do something that allows us to get more than 6 points in one turn, and Replace can do that. It can mill provinces, you can gain something and then replace that card into a Duchy and also give out a curse. So we actually probably don't need Fishing Village. I think we can get away with the only terminal. Like at first it's Steward and then eventually it's Replace. So I think what we do is we go Steward, Lurker, we get some Conspirators, we get some Alchemists with Lurker as well, and then eventually we Lurker Replace, and then we use the Replace to get extra points. And we can always get a Fishing Village if we want to get more Replace stuff. We'll sort of see how it goes at that point. But yeah, that's basically our deck. Golem we don't need. We've got actions. We've got draw. There's basically no real point to Golem here. It just feels like it's more effective to do the other things. I guess you do get both in one when you go with Golem, but we will have a very thin deck filled with actions. Problem with Golem is it's only going to be able to play action cards that aren't already in our hand, which most of them will be. But with Lurker, there are like mid-turn gains, so maybe you get to play something late. But you might get Golem here just because you skip Potion, so it's about as cheap as every other action card, to be fair. But I wouldn't be surprised if you didn't get it. It's not really doing much for you there. Well, straight away I spot Tactician, which is super terrible with Golem. So we'll be finding out if Tactician is any good. We've also got Chapel for crazy trashing and Masquerade and Lookout. So trashing is easy. Probably Chapel. So the big problem here is that there is no village except for Golem. And the only non-terminals are Courtier and Lookout, which is very bad. And for Courtier to be a real, actually worthwhile non-terminal, you have to have a Tactician or a Swindler in your hand. Otherwise, it's just plus action and that's it, which is terrible. So there's sort of no double Tactician possibly going on here. You simply cannot play enough. You've got Baron, get you 4 coins, but there's no good village. Tactician, if you double Tactician, you don't, one of those actions goes towards the other Tactician, so you don't really get a village to play with. So that feels bad. So what else is there? Well, there's Masquerade Money, which seems fine. I think this is the rare Chapel skipper board, but only because there's no engine. And there's Masquerade, which is way better for money. So I think this is just Masquerade Money, and that's sort of all you can really do here. Maybe you get to play around with some other things, but not really. I don't even think you've got room for Swindler, because if they trash your coppers into curses, well, you just give them the curses right with Masquerade. So I think it's just Masquerade big money. Golem isn't good enough as a village. It needs non-terminals, and there just aren't ones that you want to play with here in order to work that way. And yeah, there's nothing good going on, so Golem is a big no-no here. It's not a very interesting board, that one. Here comes the last kingdom. So, what do we have? We have Lookout to Trash. There is... we got Transmute to Trash, but, come on, it's Transmute. We got Sea Hag as a Junker as well. We've got Shantytown as a village. And Golem. We've got Minion for draw. So Minion's interesting because it's non-terminal. It means that it could go all right with Golem. The big problem, if you're going to draw with Minion, which we probably are in this deck, is when do you have the potion to be able to afford the Golem? Now, there is Transmute as a backup plan if you ever have potion in your hand and you can't afford Golem, but with a big Minion stack, that's probably unlikely. Can Transmute do anything for us if we want it? Probably not. So I don't like Golem. I think I'm okay if I need a village just to use Shantytown and there's Minion. What is Golem doing for us here, really? Not a lot. Now, Golem, to be fair, doesn't really have a problem when you're going to be stuck with a load of actions in your hand, because we're probably going to be using Minion for our primary draw. We do want to get... I think you have to Sea Hag here. Maybe you don't. But I think we certainly open Lookout, and we eventually want to move into playing a lot of Minions. Courtier is really nice with Minion. You can take it for action and coins and then keep going, or you can take buy with it as well. So these 2 cards are very good, and we're going to be getting a Lookout. And I'm not sure what else you really need. Is Swindler worth doing? The problem is to play more Swindlers, we need a village, and that means either Shantytown or Golem, which I don't like. I'm happy to just stick with these 3 cards, and maybe if I need 1 terminal, it's a Sea Hag. Right, maybe you can try and punish your opponent with Sea Hag. Lookout is decent dealing with Sea Hag, though, so it doesn't feel great. Golem just feels unnecessary here. I don't really need the village. I don't really need it for its effect, and the potion is just hard to use because Minion is our draw, and treasures are difficult to use with Minion. Yeah, I think Shantytown Swindler probably works a little bit better if I need village. Rather than Golem, use Shantytown if I just want to play some Swindlers. Would be nice to hit these cards with Swindler, turn them into duchies. If you can get rid of some minions from your opponent, then that's very, very good for you. There you go. So Golem was basically skippable on all of those, except there was one with the Lurker where I thought that maybe you would go for it. Golem is just very difficult to use. It's extremely awkward to play. It's risky. It's very expensive. The cost of Golem is actually really huge for what it does, and it just doesn't play nicely with the potion that you require in order to play with it. So it's sort of self-defeating. It can't play other Golems as well, so Golem really doesn't like other Golems, and for a potion cost card, that makes it a massive investment, right? So it's pretty weak, unfortunately. Anyway, I hope this was all useful for you. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.